What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Week 5 preview edition of the Football Goons podcast. Believe it or not, we are one quarter of the way through the NFL season. And before we get too sad about that, let's remember that we have quite a bit of football left. So there's no reason to get too upset about it. That may not be the case for some fantasy owners, as we've hit a fairly critical point in the season. Some leagues are a little bigger, some are smaller, so teams are in it right up until the end, but you should have a decent idea at this point of what your team is based on what you've seen to the quarter point. So I'm going to ask this. I'll throw it around the room. I'll mention right out of the gate that Deal is not with us tonight. He is away being enriched as we speak right now. So are your fantasy teams who you thought they were?
Here's my problem with fantasy football, and it literally makes no sense sometimes. Obviously, we all have players that we like. So I think when we have multiple teams, a lot of the times they look very similar. Somebody needs to explain to me how in 3 leagues, I'm 4-0, 3-1, and 3-1. And in my league with you idiots, I'm 1-3. It doesn't make sense.
I'm conspicuously absent in those other 3 leagues. I think that's a big part of it. You came at me with your 4-19 career record against me the other week. How'd that go?
How am I winning other weeks with similar player?
I don't know.
And big. I have a league right now that I'm 3-1 and have 60 more points than the next best team. And I should be happy about that, and I'm not, because in our league, I'm in the basement as usual in my rightful place. It's like destiny. It's just where I'm supposed to be.
Listen, it's one of those things. I complain about this every Sunday, and you think I would just get the point already, but nothing in fantasy football ever makes sense. If something is a lock to happen, you might as well just submit to the fact that it's probably not going to happen.
Right.
There's no rhyme or reason to anything in fantasy football, and I'm slowly grasping that, and I think I'm getting to the point where I could have more fun whining about it than actually whine about it and get too upset. So I'm in the same boat. Other than our main league where we're all together, I have some pretty dominant teams. I had some bad breaks to start the season in ours, but I don't know. I'm just kind of holding tight right now. I feel like my teams are better than they're letting on, so I'm just trying to wait it out.
Yeah, my teams are dreadful. I'm so frustrated. I consider myself to be a pretty good player. I won 5 leagues last year, podium finish in 2 other ones. So of my 8 leagues, I was top 3 in 7 of them. I just had my second consecutive 1-7 week. I went 1-7 2 weeks in a row, and the 1 is in the same league, and it's ours. I'm 3-1 in our league, and I'm terrible in the rest. And the sad news is they are who I thought they were going to be. I told you guys, off screen, I just wasn't feeling this fantasy season, and I followed through with flying colors. So I'm very proud of my failure, I guess. Frustrated.
All right, well, let's get into
something. So, AKA, make sure you listen to my advice.
The funny thing is the advice that any of the 3 of us would give is going to win everybody else championships. For whatever reason, it's just not working out for us right now. So That'll turn around. All right, let's talk about fantasy football here. As always, we had some injuries this past week. You might be looking for replacements for the first actual planned week of buys with 4 teams on a bye this week, not thanks to any kind of natural disasters or anything. So here are some of the top added names right now across a variety of fantasy platforms. We're just taking guys who are being added at high rates right now and discussing them. We don't particularly have any motives with these players. These are just the most added. So the first name being added the most right now, obviously very reactionary with Dalvin Cook going down, is Latavius Murray, the running back of the Vikings. He's going to be the quote-unquote starting back and likely going to get the goal line carries as well. Could he be a partial fix for Dalvin Cook owners if you're in a pinch?
I'm worried about it. So I'll preface my statement with this. I have claims in for Latavius Murray. in several leagues. I'm interested in him, not so much as a replacement for Cook, because I didn't own Cook at all, but also to expect Latavius Murray to give you exactly what Cook was giving you is silly.
Right.
I mean, they're different caliber players completely. So erase that from your brain. But, I'm a little shaky on the line still. They've played a lot better than I expected. It sounds crazy to say, but we've been saying it for weeks. I'd like Sam Bradford back, or based on what I've heard, is Teddy Bridgewater may be ready to be on the field when he's eligible to return week 7. So,
yeah,
if you get Case Keenum out of there, I'm interested in Murray. I want to see what he does. So I would say, throw him in there as a waiver claim. Don't throw him in there to your starting lineup next week.
Yeah, I'm a little afraid of Murray in general, just because I feel like they're going to take a very committed approach to this. It's going to be one back 20-20, and then one back, inside the red zone. And Murray's probably going to be that red zone guy, but he might have stat lines that look like 1-for-1 with a touchdown every week. You know what I mean?
I don't know about that.
I don't know about that. Oh, how about 5-for-5 with a touchdown?
Listen, Murray, Matt Asiata was borderline fantasy relevant in this offense. And listen, for all his shortcomings, Latavius Murray is a much better version of Matt Asiata. Yeah. I mean, I think we can expect more than, I know sarcasm, but 3 yards of carry is not out of the realm of possibility for this guy.
Yeah, but I guess my biggest point is I'm not so sure that he's going to get high volume carries. And then you're depending on him to score.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm kind of at with him. I think that if you pick him up and you understand that he's going to be very touchdown dependent for you, as Miles said, you're not putting him into your lineup this week. Unless you're just crushed with buys and injuries this week, you're probably not picking him up and claiming him. I know Rocco's in that boat. We were discussing a potential trade today, but you're most likely not picking him up and throwing him right into your lineup. You're going to play him depending on matchups and hope for a touchdown when you do have to play him. So, and the one thing I will say about the Vikings and what they've done the past couple of years, they've been very committed to picking a guy inside the red zone and sticking with him. So if he takes on that role, you pretty much know that when they get into the red zone, he's going to be the guy that gets the carries. So, to me, he's worth a pickup just for that fact alone.
I joked about this on the power rankings, and this will actually kind of segue into the next guy we're going to talk about. But how much could Adrian Peterson possibly cost? Like, I know, it's a look back kind of thing, and a lot of teams and players kind of burn the bridge, even if it's classy. I'm not trying to say it was a bad situation or whatever, but like, you got a guy who knows the offense, knows the city, knows the locker room. Could it be that terrible of an idea to, what are the Saints going to require? They don't want him on the field anyhow.
No, the only thing is like, it's going to take one party dropping their pride to do it. Right. So if they can get to that point, it fits like a glove, obviously. But we got this question almost right away on Twitter over the weekend, and my first response to it was, I just think there's probably too much bad blood there, mostly from Peterson's side, because he didn't understand why, there wasn't a commitment to him. So I think that would be the holdup more than anything.
Yeah, I could see the Vikings eating their words on that and being like, oh, God, we need to get Adrian back. And Adrian being like, no, I'd rather not play for New Orleans than play for you.
All right, speaking of New Orleans, that's a good transition point for us. Let's talk about Alvin Kamara, running back of the Saints. We discussed him last week. He's really been probably the best back right now in that offense. 10 catches on 10 targets last week. Granted, it was the Dolphins, so maybe some of it is matchup based or whatever, but he's gone from a deeper sleeper to a prime ad this week. So if you have the opportunity, you've got to go ahead and pick him up. I mean, I don't – there's probably not too much to say to that, but I don't know if you guys have any specific feelings on him.
No,
First of all, I love deeper sleeper.
That's a nice little quote. I'm all in on Alvin. I guess I'm going to keep referencing the power rankings because, number one, check out the article. But number two, I agree with my points. So why would I not talk about them?
Why would you not?
he looks like a bigger Darren Sproles. I mean, as far as usage, certainly not the exact same player, but he's an excellent receiver. He was at Tennessee. I was all over the guy wanting Philly to draft him, draft season, and he's proven me right. He looks excellent. There's no reason Adrian Peterson shouldn't see the field because they're a better 1-2 punch without him slowing things down. Breeze has always loved to check it to his running backs. Kamara knows what to do with the ball in his hands out of the backfield. He looks great. PPR, he needs to be a prime target.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, this is a no-brainer just because it's the New Orleans Saints offense and Drew Brees is still their quarterback, if I remember correctly. So, the stud receiving running back is what you want in that offense.
Yeah, and this is a part where I wish that you guys could be at least a fly on the wall in some of our text conversations and messenger conversations, because Miles hit the nail on the head here. Like, I don't think there's anyone in this group who didn't love Kamara coming out, and for this pretty much exact reason with the versatility. So, I don't think that we thought it would have been this quick given their current situation, but you probably ran out of time already. But if you didn't, move him up to the top of your waiver claim. Well, let's talk about the wide receiver position. Let's talk about Will Fuller of the Texans. He had 2 touchdowns in a huge Texans win last week. Is this a product of a blowout, or is he a legit deep threat for the Texans moving forward where we can expect this a little more often?
It's both. No, like it is both. It's a product of the blowout, but I think listen, I think if Will Fuller would have been healthy, I think he would have been a focal point of that receiving core all season long. And I think they were really sad to watch him get hurt in the preseason, and they were really excited for him to get back on the field this week. And it showed just in like how much how much Deshaun kind of clicked with him right away. It was just like they were trying to get him the ball, and they weren't doing it without getting the ball to DeAndre too, which is important here. I think what they're realizing is that their offensive line is not the greatest. Same thing the rest of the world has realized for, forever now. And they realize that, Lamar Miller's not the answer. Foreman's a nice piece, but it's hard to get that going. What they can be is a very good passing offense because Deshaun can extend plays. So they're probably going to pass the ball more than run going forward. And what that means is a lot of balls for a lot of different targets, including Fuller.
Yeah, this is a really nice situation because, you said it. Hopkins really didn't suffer any for Fuller's production. So I read earlier he has like a 39 or like a 34% target share in the Texans offense through the first 4 weeks of the season. So he's getting a ton of targets. And then on top of that, other guys are being able to be productive. So I think we're starting to see where like we might have thought initially that this offense was going to struggle a little bit. This could become a very fantasy friendly offense very quickly as Deshaun Watson gets more and more comfortable in this system. All right, let's talk about another name here. Devin Funchess, wide receiver of the Panthers. I'm not bringing him up just because of where he played college ball. I promise you. Legitimately leads the team in targets this season on a Panthers offense that's kind of just starting to hit their stride a little bit here. Coming off of a 2-touchdown game, he's got a lot of really friendly matchups that await over the next couple of weeks. We're into the period of the year where teams are going on buys. Am I alone in thinking he's a must-have during this time of the season?
First of all, shout out to Miles because Miles called Cam last week in his daily play, and it worked out perfectly. They playing a very weak Patriots defense at this point that just gives up 30 points to everybody apparently, but which I love saying. It makes my heart feel good. No, but they're peaking at the right time. I think there's going to be a lot of balls to go around because we're seeing a lot of different guys each week, produce. Without Olsen, Funchess is kind of like he's a decent wide receiver, but he's kind of better like as a hybrid tight end. So if you can line him up in the slot and have him play that Greg Olsen type role, yeah, he's fantastic. In a PPR format, he's going to get looks. He's going to get touches. And I think that Panthers offense is going to start hitting a little bit of stride, even after I said Cam was done last week. You know what? I'm allowed to change my mind, okay? So
you've been known to do that.
I change my mind whenever I want.
All right. let's wrap this up here. Just one more final question here. And again, this is a little bit of a tough week as far as trying to find guys if you're in a pinch. Do you guys have any interest if you're hurting badly in any of these following names? Aaron Jones, Thomas Rawls, Alex Collins, and for Rocco, Wayne Gallman.
No, and yes. Miles, go ahead. You go first.
Fine, Wayne Gallman. Aaron Jones, yeah, if you're a Ty Montgomery owner, because the more they're kind of laying this out, it's probably going to be a 1 week situation. So I'm not wasting a waiver claim on Aaron Jones because I don't want to lose my priority for a 1 week fix. Rawls, not really. How good did what is it, J.D. McKissick? Was that who it was?
Yeah.
He
I like
looked
McKissick
solid.
more than I like Rawls.
He ran really well. Actually, McKissick ran the way Rawls ran 2 years ago. Like, he cared a lot. So I kind of like the McKissick Pro-Size combo a little more than I like Rawls. And I personally, obviously I'm not in the building, but I think the Seahawks agree. Alex Collins, no. And it's a fumbling thing for me. He's fumbled twice already in his touches. And while, yes, he's looked very explosive in others, coaches are going to lose faith in a guy that coughs up the ball really quickly. Really quickly. So I'm a little scared that Collins is going to be one of those guys that comes into a week as a starter. You've got him in your lineup, and on his second touch of the day, he coughs it up and he doesn't see the ball again. So not really any of those names. I know that people are losing Cook and David Johnson and these bunch of backs have been hurt. But I honestly say, barring being the Ty Montgomery owner, I'm not real interested in these guys.
Yeah, I'm not interested in the Packers situation at all. I like McKissick more than I like Rawls. I'll talk about Gorman a little bit more later, and I thank you for just bringing him up because it makes me feel good inside. But I kind of thought that coming out, he was a much better prospect than where he was drafted. So that's just kind of my thought on that. And like I said, I'll talk a little bit more later. But yeah, I could buy in on at least Gorman and McKissick. I'll buy into McKissick, especially in a PPR, because I think he's going to get most of the pass catches. He proved that he could carry that load for them last week.
Yeah, I'm really not interested in any of these. And more than anything, I brought up some of these names because when I'm looking at the amount of claims that are going in on some of these names, and I'll play in leagues where it's super competitive, pro leagues, all different kinds of stuff. And people are using waiver claims every single week on players like this. I just don't understand where you're using a waiver claim just because a hot name or a guy's going to start as a flash in the pan kind of thing and not really studying the situation. I think every single one of these players, the team they represent, has a really bad running back situation overall. Like, I feel like it doesn't matter who you put in there, short of like maybe Barry Sanders at this point, where it's really not going to make that gigantic of a difference. That's just my opinion. But more than anything, I've got to stress it. And I see this so much. Like, if you're playing in a pro league with me, feel free to claim every one of these guys in front of me. I'll keep that number one waiver claim status for when I really need something. But you've got to be smart about moving up and down the waiver claim, using it on names like Alex Collins and Thomas Rawls. Know what you're doing before you do it.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to say,
the waiver thing for me, it kills me because you get those hot names and everybody wants to claim them. And guess who's dropped the next week for the new hot name? Like, how many rosters is Kenny Golladay still on?
Yep.
Are you kidding me? He scored 2 touchdowns. So you're 1-3. So like, why is Kenny Golladay on roster still? That's ridiculous. We're going to say that in 2 weeks, where I'm going to say, why is Aaron Jones on rosters? He's not. You dropped him for the next guy. Your waiver claim. Now, there are leagues where it resets every week based on the standings. Then fine, use them up. But if you're in a rolling waiver, I'm waiting for Kareem Hunt to get hurt. I want Charkandrick West in every league.
Yep.
You know what I mean? A guy who's shown he can play, and he's in a great offense, and he's only going to play because the starter got hurt. I don't want the Giants any running back.
Right.
They have one rushing touchdown this year, and it's Eli Manning. And it's not. Don't tell me it's because Paul Perkins is that bad. The line is terrible.
The line is terrible. I'll give it to you.
I don't care if Wayne Gallman, nothing.
I think the biggest thing is, and I agree with you guys 100%. I'm not trying to give up waiver priority on that if it's a rolling waiver, but I think the biggest thing is, and this is kind of how everybody feels about it, or most people feel about it. Everybody wants David Johnson from 2 years ago. Everybody wants Jordan Howard from last year, and the way to get that is to take chances on these guys. Like,
not chances on bad situations.
I understand that it's analyzing the situation is important, but if and I don't think this is going to happen, but if J.D. McKissick takes over the Seahawks backfield the next 2 weeks and winds up being a 900-yard rusher and catches 40 balls, everybody's going to be like, oh, my God, I'm so glad I bought in on him in week 4 when I did. Obviously, everything is subject to hindsight, but, if listen, 2 years ago, if you were the guy that drafted David Johnson in like picked up David Johnson after week 7, you probably won your fantasy championship because you took that chance. So I don't have a problem with people taking chances. Obviously, analyzing the situation is important.
It's the only key. Nothing else matters. David Johnson picked up an offense where Chris Johnson was like the 3rd leading rusher in the league.
Yeah,
and got hurt. It's all about the situation. It's all about the situation. David Johnson.
Okay, so David Johnson
come to New York, and maybe he'll be successful. You have to be able to block. You have to.
I understand you have to be able to block, Miles, but David Johnson is David Johnson not a special player?
Of course he is. Is Aaron Jones a special player?
Do we know?
I'm pretty sure. I feel confident that I know.
Listen, this is we could argue about this all day, and I'm not saying that I'm right or you're right. What I'm saying is I understand the desire to want to reach on that potential. And if that guy winds up getting 0 carries next week, then yes, you can absolutely cut him and move on and try and find the next guy. But now
your 9th waiver priority when Charkandrick West comes up.
Okay, if Charkandrick West comes up. If Kareem Hunt stays healthy all year, then Charkandrick West is never coming up. You're saving it for a what if.
And you're wasting on a no.
All right, we're going to move on. As much as I'm having fun spectating this, because this is good stuff right here. I'll tell you what, this is 100 times more authentic than that staged Skip Bayless BS that happens every morning. So I'll just give you that. Right now, this is authentic right here.
If I would have known we were taking shots at Skip, I would have started an hour ago.
We're not. I'm just throwing it out there. All right, let's go into a no huddle here. Rapid responses to some of the bigger storylines around the league right now. Are you ready to buy back in on Todd Gurley, or do you still not completely trust the production at this point?
This question hurt my eyes. What? Who doesn't trust the production at this point?
This question, I'll be honest, is for Rocco. Because he was hurt so bad by Gurley last year, and he held on to it until maybe 2 weeks ago.
I own Todd Gurley in 2 leagues this year, and I still hold on to it. All right. Oh. But he's making it very, very easy for me to let go of it. No, I mean, listen. Todd Gurley owners from last year are mad because they had no quarterback play. The line struggled. They were predictable. They're not that team. Jeff Fisher. They're not that team anymore. Jared Goff looks like he's maturing into a better than serviceable quarterback. Like he's on his way to being exactly what we thought he was going to be before his face showed up at the NFL draft. Okay. They have better receivers now. In Watkins, so they're more, not one-dimensional. The line is playing better. So, yes, Gurley is not, they're not stacking the box with 9 and 10 and saying, Todd, we dare you to try and run on us. And them still trying to run on them, not to mention. But, listen, this is a great situation for Todd. I'm happy for him. I'm happy for Miles because go Dogs. This is a great situation for Todd. It's turning into what we expected him to produce last year. I'm all in.
Yeah, I guess my question really should have been more geared toward, are you buying back in on an elite status for him?
Yeah.
That would be more appropriate.
I
Todd,
think so.
next Todd was a borderline top 10 pick for us this year for the Goons. Maybe like just outside the top 10. Next year he'll be back to top 6.
Yeah, I mean he's on pace for like 28 touchdowns. That's unlikely. I mean he's going to slow down some, but he's absolutely an RB1. I mean he's top 5 guy the rest of the way. The way they're using him, I mean Sean McVay is going to be pointed to as a genius, and he's not being a genius. He's just not Jeff Fisher. Like, hey, how about I try different ways to get Todd Gurley the ball instead of just running in between the tackles?
Right.
Let's see how that works. Oh, he had like a 65-yard touchdown catch.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's amazing what happens when you get the ball into the hands of the best player on your team.
Yep.
All right, next question here. Which team will get their lead back on track faster? A lot of this is just a product of the way the games have unfolded for them, but the Dolphins with Jay Ajayi or the Raiders with Marshawn Lynch?
With the current injury to Derek Carr, I would like to think that they're going to lean more heavily on the run, but I also think that makes them more predictable, so I don't know if it gets back on track quicker. So I would have to probably lean with the Dolphins, but I'd have to probably lean with the Dolphins just because it's at this point, surprisingly, Jay Cutler is a more stable situation than EJ Manuel. I mean, garbage in, garbage out, but still.
How crazy. Yeah, that play, y'all see that Jay Cutler play? That was hilarious. When they did the
Wildcat?
They did the Wildcat. And he wasn't even sort of like, most quarterbacks don't like fake that they're doing anything, but my man's hands didn't leave his hips. That was awesome. Yeah. That was pure. That was the most Jay Cutler thing that's ever happened.
Somebody actually superimposed or photoshopped him smoking a cigarette at the bottom.
Nice little. They gave him a nice break. That being said, I agree with Ajayi, and I'll tell you what. I mean, it's hard not to be hard on the Dolphins right now, but look at the way their season has started. You had a hurricane, then you had to travel across the country to LA, then you had to travel up north to the Jets, then you had to travel to London. So, they're not a great team, but I'm not going to put getting shut out at London squarely on their ability. I think when they finally come home this week for an actual home game after the month that they just had, I kind of think we're going to see a better Dolphins team, and a large part of that's obviously Jay Ajayi. So I kind of think he'll be the better. I would have said him anyways, but I agree with Rock with the Carr injury. I feel really sad for Raiders fans. That's unfair what's happened to them this season. They had last year to get derailed because of Carr's leg, and now 2-2 staring at another month without Carr. I mean, EJ Manuel, and you're in the best division of football. I feel sad for him.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I think it's the Dolphins too. I think they just have to get to a point this week where they say, let's get back to what we planned to be this year. And that's a run-heavy team who makes it happen in the past game off of the run. They just have to get back to that. They kind of lost their way with that. It's not too late at this point. The leaders in your division are 2-2. You can get back into the race here, so to speak. And the fastest way to take care of an issue with your offensive line is to establish yourself in the running game. It's the easiest thing to do as an offensive line is just maul somebody and push them ahead. So, if you got all these different issues with your offensive line, reestablish who you are, confirm your identity and get back to it, because I just think Ajayi is special, and they really just haven't given him the chance to show that much. So I think they'll get back on track. All right, on the surface, this question might seem a little crazy because of the two players that we're comparing, but taking a deeper look at it, who will be more consistent moving forward this season, Andy Dalton or Cam Newton?
It's actually a pretty cool duo because they've had sort of mirrored seasons. I mean, they're two guys that were drafted as, back-end QB1s. The teams that waited on quarterback have these guys, and they've really, really struggled the first couple weeks, and then both exploded last week. Dalton's actually on a 2-week trend of playing well. He played pretty well against the Packers and then really beat up the Browns. But Uh, consistency, I say Andy Dalton. And I kind of agree with what Rock said earlier that I do believe Cam's going to turn it around this year. Please, for the sake of my own fantasy teams, Cam, will you turn it around this year? But for me, it's a Dalton thing because I just think, simple answer, his game lends itself more to consistency than Cam's does. Cam's going to be a little bit more reliant on the rushing touchdown, kind of the bigger play down the field. Andy Dalton has A.J. Green. Just throw it near the guy. He's done it for 2 straight weeks, and guess what? You almost beat Green Bay, and then you destroyed the Browns after looking like a junior high team the first 2 weeks. So, and no disrespect to junior high football. So throw it near A.J. Green.
I think what concerns me about this is I want to lean towards Dalton, but we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. The lows with Dalton are so low. Wow, low. So for me, from a consistency standpoint, I think Cam will be more consistent in the sense of where he scores on average from week to week. I think Andy Dalton might give you more big weeks than Cam will throughout the rest of the season because A.J. Green, because Joe Mixon's starting to look like they want him to be, a bigger focal point of that offense. But the lows for bad Andy Dalton games, I mean, we joked about it. There is no such thing worse than a bad Andy Dalton game. It's just non-existent. So, from a high to low standpoint, I think the high and the low are more separated for Dalton than they are for Cam.
Yeah, I would agree that, traditionally when Dalton tanks out, it's real bad. But I think and I know that it's early on to say this and commit to it, but I think that they're going to kind of streamline things, to be honest with you. Bill Lazor comes in. He's the offensive coordinator now. He's going to call plays. They've kind of stripped it back and gotten back to the basics. What do we have to do to get the ball in A.J. Green's hands? What do we have to do to get Joe Mixon and Gio Bernard, who are more dynamic playmakers, more involved in this offense? So I actually think that moving forward, when the Bengals do struggle, it's going to be more of a product of their defense not being able to hold up their end of the bargain and not so much the offense. I think the offense is going to get it figured out. I think that they're going to level out and they're going to kind of be pretty consistent moving forward. My issue with Cam Newton is that when for every really great game that he just has like a subpar game. And it could just be game flow, whatever it is. It's been, other than his MVP year, that's kind of been his MO. So I actually like what the Bengals are doing offensively, and I really am trusting that they're going to level it out the rest of the way. All right, last question here. Can the Bills make a legitimate run for the playoffs, or is their roster purge going to finally end up catching up to them? They've beaten the Broncos and the Falcons impressively in back-to-back weeks now, despite pretty much looking like they were tanking out of the gate.
I'm going to go – I don't even think it's going out on a limb. I think the Bills can compete for a playoff spot, and I'd be the first person at the beginning of the season to tell you that this team was heading in the same direction as the Jets. But I don't know if they have enough to overcome Tom Brady for a full 16 games, but they just beat the Broncos, okay? And the Raiders are without Carr now for a month, so who knows what's going to happen out there. So obviously the Chiefs, the Steelers, and the Patriots – and then whatever one team winds up winning the South, I don't think 2 teams are coming out from there. So now you have 2 spots for a combination of the Bills, the Broncos, the Raiders. I mean, the Chargers, Ravens, maybe Bengals if they can turn it around. But you're talking about a lot of ifs. The Bills already have a 2-game lead on the Bengals, a 2-game lead on the Raiders. I mean, on the Ravens, a 1-game lead on the Raiders. If nothing else, a tiebreaker over the Broncos. Like, they're in a really good position right now. And I hate saying that because I live in Bills country, and tomorrow any of my friends that listen to this are going to give me so much crap about saying that the Bills could make the playoffs after, hosing them for a whole year about how bad Tyrod Taylor is. But they're in a great spot right now. You cannot deny that.
Right. Yeah, I like them. And that you kind of hit it. That Broncos win might be the one. Yeah, I mean, that's a huge tiebreaker for them to have over Denver being another wild card contender head to head. So we'll see. But they got a shot. I'm interested to see what happens when they play the Patriots. You've got like a team that can't score 30 against a team that can't stop allowing 30.
Yeah.
And then a team that is just stuffing offenses playing the Pats, who are playing lights out on offense. So that'll be a fun game. I don't know when that is, but looking forward to it a little bit.
Yeah, I think that they are legitimate. I think the biggest two reasons are, number one, the defense is legitimate. I don't know what they're – I'll be honest with you. Like, I haven't studied the Bills' depth chart, so I don't know how deep they run. But at this point right now, it's not going to matter because they're playing inspired. The system is working. They're shutting people down pretty much completely at this point. And number two, I mean, other than like the Chiefs and – if the Steelers are at home and I don't know, maybe the Packers, like, do we even know who's really good in the league right now? I don't feel like I have a grasp on it right now through the first 4 weeks. So I think it's open for anybody.
The Chiefs are good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Other than the Chiefs, everybody else has, some kind of a qualifier. So
I don't want to sound like a homer right now, but is it possible that the AFC East is just better than we thought it was going to be? You know what I mean?
Looks
like
that way.
The Dolphins. I mean, I'm not saying the Jets are there because I mean you beat up on the Dolphins and you beat up on the Jaguars. I mean, two decent wins, I guess. They're not the worst teams in the league, but I mean the Dolphins right now are sitting in the basement, and we think that they can turn it around for sure because they got a solid running game. The Bills are sitting in first, and we all know what the Patriots are. I think we underestimated how decent the rest of the division could be and overestimated the Patriots because they're the Patriots.
Right.
Could be the case. All right, let's take a quick pause here to talk about one of our sponsors, and that is our friends at Gorb. That's GHORBH. Our friends at Gorb tell us that, in life you have got two choices, basically. You could either get hungry or you can be hungry. And for me, I've really bought into that motto. It's kind of taking over right now. If you look on social media, I see posts all the time about people who, are posting with hashtag Gorb and talking about all the things that they've got going on and how they're getting hungry instead of being hungry. And, we can get the constant reminder because it's all over social media. It's a huge movement taking place, but they've also got this absolutely awesome apparel line. I'm sporting it right now. It's hoodie season, which I love because I'm a big guy. I like to be comfy. I like to be warm. So I throw a hoodie on and I'm good to go. And they're comfortable. They're fashionable. They look good. They've got stuff for guys, gals, everybody pretty much. All kinds of great designs that you could check out. You could check them out at GHORBH.com. That's GHORBH.com to find out about the movement that is taking over right now. All right, guys, it is that time of the week to talk about our goons and ghosts. So we're just giving you 3 picks this week, with Deal being off, being enriched as we speak. I'm just going to keep throwing that up because I think that's a funny word. But obviously our goons are the guys who we believe that you need to get into your lineups, who are going to overperform based on where they are pre-ranked for this week. Our ghosts are the guys that we think are going to underperform based on where they're ranked. They're probably higher up and we just aren't buying into it. So let's start this thing off. Miles, give us your goon this week.
Yeah, I really struggled with goon last week. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Will not happen again here. I'm going with Doug Martin, the running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, playing against the Patriots at home on Thursday night. The worst defense in NFL history. All right, maybe not, but they're pretty bad. Martin's actually pre-ranked 23rd at running back coming into this week. A lot of that may be due to the fact that the coaching staff has not really committed to him yet. But that's game plan more than anything. Jacquizz Rodgers, Charles Sims, that backfield's not played nearly up to par enough to keep this guy off the field. Pats have allowed the second most points to fantasy running backs, despite the fact that Kareem Hunt in his first career game is really the only legitimate running back they've faced to this point. Doug Arnott, fresh off his 3-game suspension, he has to be raring to go. You know he's ready to go. He's got a good team. They've got playoff aspirations. He's ready to get after it. Like I said, the guys they had on, coaches are saying, hey, we might split time. They didn't do anything special at all. They're ready for a guy like Doug Martin to come in. Like I said, short week at home. How do you beat the Patriots? Don't let Tom Brady get the ball. Doug Martin's going to get the ball. He's going to have to control the clock. I think they're going to let him. I'm fearlessly here predicting 140 total yards rushing and receiving, 2 touchdowns to deliver a top 10 finish for you, despite his 23rd pre-ranking in his first game back, and then sell high, sell high, sell high.
All right, there you have it. There's the goon for Miles. Rocco, who do you got for us this week?
I picked a goon who is actually pre-ranked a little bit higher, but that's only because I think he's going to really blow out all these expectations that they have for him. Carlos Hyde comes in at running back 5. Don't let the 49ers 0-4 start fool you into thinking that the entire team is underperforming, because Hyde is actually averaging double-digit fantasy points every week in PPR leagues. He's currently 6th in the league in rushing and has had a great matchup and has a great matchup this week with the Colts, who have the 31st overall defense and the 22nd rush defense. If the 49ers want to get that first win out of the way, which I think they can do, sorry, Deal, I know you're not here, but Colts defense is not that great. You already know this. But if they want to get that first win out of the way, they have to get Hyde involved early. I'm gonna give you guys a hashtag this week. Hashtag ride Hyde. Ride him all the way to the end zone. All right? Get that going. I like a huge stat line for him this week. 15 rushes, 135 yards, another 5 catches, 50 yards, 2 total touchdowns. Carlos Hyde, top 3 fantasy back this week.
All right, and my goon this week is currently ranked running back number 26, Wendell Smallwood of the Philadelphia Eagles. Smallwood has looked good the past 2 weeks. He's taking over the passing downs and receiving back role that Sproles has vacated with his injury to this point over the past 2 weeks. He's out-snapping all the other running backs on the roster, and he's been pretty productive in doing it as well. He's got 6 pass targets in a run-heavy attack last week. They ran the ball pretty much at a religious pace last week, and he still managed 6 targets in the passing game. So the targets are going to consistently be there in this Eagles offense for Wendell Smallwood. He hit 80 yards and a touchdown, 80 combined yards and a touchdown last week, and his touches are only growing at this point. I know LeGarrette Blount had the big week, kind of on paper and with the highlight, but anybody who's expecting that long run like LeGarrette Blount had last week to be a consistent thing from week to week, I hope you're in my league, because it's just not going to happen every week. That was kind of a one-off kind of thing. I do think that Blount is still going to be a candidate for touchdowns, but I'm not worried about him stealing away those huge chunk plays from any other backs in that offense, especially Smallwood. Cards are a middle of a pack defense against running backs in fantasy to this point this year. Their stats have been helped out by their first 2 games, quite honestly. They played the Colts and the Lions, who are 2 teams who, quite honestly, their offensive philosophy is not built around establishing the run. Cowboys and 49ers both had success against the Cardinals with their running backs. Obviously, a lot more elite talent level on those 2 teams than what Philadelphia is going to be bringing, but I still like Wendell Smallwood this week. I'm not going with another guy coming off a suspension so that he can be put inactive at the last minute. I'm going with Smallwood. 130 total yards this week and a touchdown. He'll finish significantly higher than running back 26 this week. All right, it's time for our ghosts. Rocco, get us started.
So my ghost this week is Jordan Howard of the Chicago Bears. Pretty much in almost every league drafted, Howard was drafted as like a top 6 or 7 fantasy back. He's really not that far behind this year in total yard in rushing yards, which he's 12th in the league. The bigger issue for me is that he's 13th in touches. He's just not getting the high volume of touches that we thought he was going to get. And now he's going up against the Minnesota rush defense that's currently number 5 in the league. And they've only given up 76 points total so far through 4 games, which is top 10 in the league. I think what hurts Howard the most this week is going to be a failure to get into the end zone. I still like him for 12 to 15 touches, but without getting in the end zone, I look for a pedestrian stat line of 12 carries, 65 yards, no scores, and going to finish way outside your top 10 running backs.
All right, my ghost this week, I'm going to kind of set this one up for a little piggyback action here with Miles coming up, but my ghost is Dez Bryant, wide receiver number 6 this week. You might be looking at it on paper and saying Dez Bryant against the Packers as number 6 and you're going to ghost him. Yes, and here's why. The Packers are surprisingly the 5th best pass defense in the NFL at this point. They've only given up 188 yards per game passing at this point and just 4 touchdowns surrendered. They're going to play against a team who wants to come in and establish the run, keep Aaron Rodgers off the field, play the time of possession game. I don't think the pass game is going to be a priority on top of all of that. Dez has an extensive history against the Packers. I think we've highlighted this many times. In case you were wondering, Dez dropped it. I don't know if you forgot about that, but he did drop it. So he's catching less than 40% of his targets this year. Teams are deliberately moving and rolling coverage to his side and basically daring the Cowboys to beat them with Terrence Williams or Cole Beasley at this point. I don't envision that that's going to happen where the Cowboys are going to light them up like that. 3 games versus the Packers have been really feast or famine to this point. He's not going to finish in the top 10 this week. Certainly not number 6. I'm going to give Dez Bryant 3 catches, 58 yards, and a fumble against the Packers this week. He is my ghost of the week. Miles?
Now, before I go, important question. Do you see him dropping one against the Packers?
Oh, he's absolutely going to drop one.
I had heard he might have done that in the past.
He Dez dropped it
against the Packers.
Yeah.
Just curious. All right, so yeah, good little piggyback. It's nice to see we're on the same page in our full Cowboys hating attire. But Dak Prescott is my ghost of the week, again, against the Packers here. Dak's hosting them. He's pre-ranked number 3 at quarterback here, and that seems really overboard. I know it's a young season. It's only been 4 a week, but he's only been top 10 twice, both of those being number 9. And that's in large part due to his rushing ability and the touchdowns he can score on the ground. Green Bay, they're ranked number 4 fantasy points against quarterbacks. They've only allowed 1 quarterback, Andy Dalton, to throw for multiple touchdowns. So he had the only 2 TD game against these guys. 1 quarterback to go over 250 yards passing, which was a blazing 252. That's the high water mark right now against the Packers, which is awesome. More importantly for the Dak thing, none have run for a touchdown, and that includes Russell Wilson, who certainly has that ability. It's not like they've only played basically Mannings and Dan Marino. I mean, these guys can run a little bit. So keeping those guys out of the end zone is key to keeping Dak Prescott off the fantasy leaderboards. I think they keep Dak in check. And honestly, aside from that, I think if Dallas wants to win this game, this is a Zeke Elliott monster game. Green Bay is actually the 10th worst against running backs in fantasy. So game script wise, same thing I said about keeping Tom Brady off the field there for Doug Martin. Well, you got to keep Aaron Rodgers off the field, especially on the fast track in Dallas. Keeping him off the field is getting Zeke Elliott tons of touches, tons of yardage. I think Dallas could absolutely win this game, but I don't think it's because of Dak Prescott through the air. I think it's Zeke Elliott. I'm going with 220, a touchdown and a pick for Dak, under 20 yards rushing for about a mid-tier quarterback to finish for the guy who's pre-ranked number 3.
All right, there you have it. Those are the goons and ghosts for this week. Let's get into our daily fantasy best values this week. Daily fantasy, the instinct obviously would be to just spend all of your money on the highest, most expensive guys that are going to give you the best output. But in order to get some of those more expensive guys, you've got to make some concessions elsewhere with your budget. So we're looking for a player who we think you could spend less on, who's going to give you similar production to some of the top guys at their position. So, we're basically looking for some value plays so that you can bump up and save money to use it elsewhere. I'll start it off this week. And guys, I hope you have your snorkels ready. I hope you've got your scuba gear because we're taking a deep dive this week. All right. Rock, you may or may not appreciate this one. You kind of were blown away by my choice here earlier. I'm going with Robbie Anderson of the New York Football Jets. $5,400 is all it's going to cost you, significantly cheaper than most wide receivers out there. He's averaging 6 targets per game and a surprisingly effective to this point passing attack of the Jets. You know, Bilal Powell is now seemingly, you know, unless they do something boneheaded, the guy who is going to play running back for them, get the majority of the snaps. He opens up a lot of different elements for their offense. Austin Seferian-Jenkins, he's not anything super special, but he's opening up things in the middle of the field, taking some of that coverage away from some of these receivers on the outside. So now you've got 2 elements that teams have to game plan for a little bit and watch out for. It's opening things up on the outside. The Browns are the 4th worst against the pass this year. They've given up 9 passing touchdowns already, 1,025 yards already. Anderson's going to give you a wide receiver 1 type of play for just $5,400 against a team who is very prone to giving up the long ball, the big splash play. So this is what I'm counting on out of Robbie Anderson this week, that with the way the Jets have been playing, that they'll be able to sneak one over the top against a very suspect Browns defense. He'll be able to hit for a long touchdown or at least a huge chunk of yardage at some point. You know, I want to be able to basically afford Le'Veon Bell this week because he's playing against the Jaguars defense. So I'm going to spend $5,400 on Robbie Anderson and take a chance that he hits on something. I like him for 5 catches, 89 yards, and a touchdown this week for just 5,400 greenbacks. All right, Miles, who do you have daily value?
You know, South, I like you. I think you're a good guy. I think you're a good host. You went on a nice little speech about saving money on daily fantasy so you can afford the expensive guys. And then you gave your example, and you went with a luxurious $5,400 pick. I mean, Robbie Anderson, I'm going to go with a guy that makes him look like that big ticket item, that expensive. I mean, he is the premium extravagant spender at the wide receiver position, because I'm going $900 cheaper on FanDuel to $4,500, aka the same price I would be if I were on FanDuel, because it is the minimum cost for a player on FanDuel. And it is baffling to me that they have a minimum player who is a starting wide receiver on his team. I mean, nothing else. I don't mean the starting 3. A starting wide receiver on a team should never cost the minimum. You can benefit from this mistake by the site if you take your 3rd receiver position and roster Jaron Brown from the Arizona Cardinals. Brown is going up this week. Again, $4,500 minimum player against a Philly defense that seems completely incapable of covering outside receivers. Let me tell you what Philly's done the last 2 weeks. Against the Giants 2 weeks ago, they allowed over 7 catches and 65 yards to 3 different guys: Odell Beckham Jr., Brandon Marshall, and Sterling Shepard. Beckham scored twice. Shepard had 130 yards. Marshall had 8 catches, shredding these guys. Then last week they play the Chargers. 2 guys, Keenan Allen and Tyrell Williams, each had 5 catches for over 110 yards, and Williams scored. These guys are getting shredded through the air. Absolutely shredded. Now listen, the Cardinals haven't been lighting it up, but the point is for Jaron Brown, he's completely solidified himself as the number 2 receiver on that team behind Larry Fitzgerald. He secured double-digit targets 2 of the last 3 weeks, and last week against the Niners, he broke out for an 8-catch, 105-yard performance. Philly, I think, is going to focus on keeping Larry Fitzgerald out of this game, focus on the interior, which opens things up on the outside for John Brown, J.J. Nelson, and more importantly, Jaron Brown, who's playing more than both of those guys combined at this point, snap-wise. I like Brown for a nice little humble 6-catch, 90-yard, 1 touchdown performance against Philadelphia. But that gives you 18 FanDuel points for the league minimum. Again, guys that are going to be inactive, healthy scratches, cost as much as a dude who's going to give you 18 FanDuel points. Please, please, please don't ignore this one. Please don't do it for yourself. Unless you're entering the same contest I am, and then don't do it. Ignore it.
All right. And hey, the added benefit is you have no idea what the announcers and the broadcasters are going to call them this week. I've heard
J.J.
Jaquan,
Brown. Yeah.
I've heard Jaquan. I've heard Jawan.
It's not hard to say.
I've heard it all. So, all right, Rocco, give us your daily value this week.
I just can't. I found some place to spend between you and Miles. So call it a hunch. But I think Wayne Gorman is actually going to take over that Giants backfield. And for $5,200, he's my daily player of the week. Listen, the Giants offense, running game at least, has been atrocious so far this year. I understand that. Most, if not all, of the blame is going on the line. I get that. But let's not ignore the fact that Deal's boy, Paul Perkins, has been kind of bad, really bad. Orleans Darkwa is banged up, and Gorman is making the most of his opportunities behind a really terrible offensive line. He led the Giants last week with 13 touches, 11 rushes, 2 receptions. He did get in the end zone, which is absolutely astonishing for any running back in that offense. Because as you know, Miles said the only rushing touchdown they have this year is from the statue himself, the face, Eli Manning. All right? So I get it. It's not a lot to look forward to in the Giants' backfield. But for $5,200, Ben McAdoo has got to do something to spark this offense. He's got to do something, okay? He's playing a banged-up team this week. The Chargers are ranked 31st against the run. So listen, as bad as the Giants are on offense, it's kind of like object that's unable to move against object that's not able to stop a soul. So something's got to give here. You know, it's not the immovable object, it's the object that can't move. So I like Gorman here to give the Giants a little bit of spark out of the backfield. I like Ben McAdoo to ride the hot hand. He knows he's got to make a change. His season at 0-4 is on the line at this point, and he's going to play the guy that gives him the best chance to win this week against the Chargers, and I think that's Wayne Gorman. For $5,200, you're going to get running back 2 production. He's not going to be a top 10 fantasy back. I get that, but he's going to come in and give you a nice boost to your offense for almost half the price of your top running backs.
All right, guys, that's it for this week's edition of the show. Hopefully you're feeling at least a little bit more positive about your teams moving forward if things have been looking bad. If not, now could be a good time to make a move, and hopefully, we've given you some good information here. Be sure to stay tuned to footballgoons.com for all of our updates each and every week. Every single week, Miles updates his power rankings, which you may have heard about at earlier points in this podcast. And it's the only place to get them, footballgoons.com. Lots of good information, good write-ups in there each and every week. You can check us out on social media too. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/footballgoons, @footballgoons on the Twitter machine. And you can check us out on our YouTube channel, as many of you have been watching the show live each and every Tuesday night. Subscribe to us and comment there. We'll answer your lineup questions, update you on who's in and out each Sunday morning as well. We always try to hit you guys up on social media whenever you send us something. We understand that you, our loyal listeners, are pretty much the only reason to really keep going and putting this stuff out there. So send us your lineup questions, your comments, your concerns, whatever else you want to talk about, and we'll be sure to get back to you in no time at all. We'll catch you next week.